All set.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Going to go ahead and call the Fire Station Building Committee to order. It is, that's a good question. I don't even know what date it is. It's Tuesday midnight at 12 o'clock. Pursuant to section 20 of chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This meeting of the Fire Building Committee for the town of Bridgewater will be fully remote and accessible to the public through remote participation in the greatest extent possible. There'll be no in-person attendance permitted. Citizens who wish to tune into the meeting may do so via Zoom or Facebook Live. I'll first move to public comment. And Josh, I can see the screen is not full. It doesn't look like any public members are here.
No public comment.
Okay, and we'll move right into new business, and I'll turn it over to Brian.
Well, I've given you everybody some what I feel is pretty exciting stuff. I sent out the rendering, and I didn't get any reaction. I thought I was going to get a whole bunch of emails and reaction, and it's been silent. So what we did is we drew elevations for what was proposed on plan. And for me, this is kind of the exciting part of the project, because we take a space needs assessment, which is an 8.5 by 11 document, and we try to make architecture out of it. And that's what everybody remembers, what it looks like. They don't remember the space needs assessment. They just want to see what it looks like. And I think, personally, I think this facility looks great, but that's that's my elevations and what you were intending to see. And I don't know if this is close to the mark or misses the mark. So that's up for you to tell me. But the rendering seeing as far as materials, exterior materials, size of the building, floor plan. And when I get the cost estimate back at 16,635, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I don't know, again, what your reaction is to this, but cost estimating right now is a very, very difficult endeavor, because they're trying to project in a time where escalation is really at an unknown. For the 22.
Hey Brian.
Yeah.
You keep unfortunately you keep going in and out, and I'm wondering if you turn off your video, if you'd have a better
idea
reception. You might be chewing up too much bandwidth.
Good idea, and maybe that would help.
There you go.
I'm off of cellular, but actually 16.6. Let me know if I keep going in and out. But at 16.6, we're trying to project the cost of the building for fall of 2022. So there's escalation in this number, and the escalation is kind of a hard thing to project with all this stuff we're going through currently, with supply chain problems and escalation and costs of the project. What we try to look at is the cost of the building, and the cost of the building is $514.24 a square foot. That in itself seems to be in line with municipal fire facilities in Massachusetts. So that's a good thing. So I'm pretty confident with the estimate, and our estimator is not trying to be the low bidder here. The estimator is trying to put a number together that when you do bid the project, they're going to look good and we're going to look good. And hopefully you'll get a number below this. We never want to project a number that's low. So we do add some escalation and some contingency on these numbers. So I'm interested to get your reaction.
So I would add, Brian, I tend to agree with you. And I was just had a meeting before this one, and I was remarking how I thought that the estimate was, I reviewed it. I think it was a conservative estimate, meaning I think, the estimator, built in plenty of escalation, built in, sort of figured on the high side overall. But I do think I was pleasantly surprised by the construction cost and the total project cost. So I think it's something less than I was anticipating. I was anticipating something up in the 24, 25 range. So for total project. So not a terrible cost at all. Just based on what I've seen in other projects that we're doing.
And whenever we're talking total project, an easy way to do it to get to total project is you take the hard costs, you add 15% for soft costs, you add 10% for contingency. And if you just did it on a percentage basis, you're at 21 million. And I did it more identifying soft costs and then adding 10%, and I'm still right around 21 million. So it's passes the check for doing it two ways.
So on the is there anything, Brian, that sticks out for you on the estimate that would be, underestimated, just based on your experience? Is there any, I guess my question is there anything we have to be, concerned about? Any of those line items we have to be concerned about?
The only thing we don't know is how the town of Bridgewater handles bonding costs and legal fees. Sometimes municipalities charge that to the project, and sometimes they take it out of another capital line.
Yeah, we don't, so generally speaking, and I think this would be the case on this project, we don't have legal fees. We've got a in-house attorney. So I think we're going to be okay on legal expense. The bonding costs, probably not something we would figure, make a decision on until after the project was bid, just to see where the bid came in and see bond, how bond premiums might affect our decision and so forth. So
other than that, I'm confident, and I'm confident all the way up to fall of 2022.
All right. So I'd just be curious to know what the group thinks of the rendering, because obviously that's, and Brian, we didn't respond to you because we were still trying to pick ourselves up off the floor because it was such a beautiful rendering. No, I'm just curious what the chief and fire folks think about the rendering.
Brian, I thought it looked fantastic.
I agree. Looks awesome.
Yeah, it's exactly what I had in mind. Looks beautiful.
I think it's too small, but I'll defer to the chief. Now, I just had a quick question, Brian. The roof line, looking at the front of the building, I think we had early on discussions. We have some issues around the property location in terms of deed restriction. And I think that we really wanted to appease, some sort of LEED certification, solar if we could. Is that a decorative roof line from the street and the actual bays, a flat roof? Could we put solar up there?
We don't have any flat roof on this building.
Okay.
It is a low slope metal roof on the bays. So there is a slope there, but that could accommodate solar.
Okay. So in terms of just design, is it too early to say whether it would be a LEED certified building at any level?
Yeah, it would be built to the LEED silver certification.
Okay, and would we
LEED
anticipate?
silver right now is Massachusetts building code.
Okay. And LEED silver, would that have a requirement for solar or no?
No.
Okay. And would there be an anticipated additional cost to put solar up there? And if so, would you have a rough idea?
I don't have a rough idea, but yes, this roof can be a plug and play for solar.
Okay.
What about the outbuilding too, Brian? Would that buy us more space for solar?
Yeah, that's also a sloped roof, and you could also do solar on that.
Okay, I just had another follow-up in terms of in the design, is there any radiant planned for the floor and the, first couple of feet at the entrance of the bays to keep the doors from freezing?
The cost estimate includes radiant for the entire apparatus floor. That's in the estimate.
Okay, would that extend outside at all to keep the doors from freezing?
We have not shown any on the aprons. And I
Okay,
think the biggest concern would probably be the north apron. That's the back side of this building.
okay, and-
The rest of the bays on this elevation, on the front elevation, those are southern facing bays.
okay, so you anticipate a lot of snowpack melt and stuff not being an issue at the front of the station?
That's right. We have solar exposure, southern exposure there.
Okay. And then the other piece was, I know it's just a rendering, but I'm kind of adamant about the glass folding doors, or even if they're roll up, just the aesthetic view from the street. And I know that I had talked to the chief about a cheaper door in the rear where they enter in. Is that planned as part of this price?
The cost estimate right now has glass front and back.
Okay. And are these a roll up or bifold?
They're priced as roll ups.
Okay.
The price difference was almost double, Brian, if I remember correctly.
That's
Or a
correct.
third.
Yeah, and you have contingency. So if you wanted to go to folding, you could have the similar look. And there would be money in the budget for those, if that's the direction you wanted to go.
Just so I know, what's the benefit of like a bifold door versus, excuse me, versus a roll-up door?
But with a bifold door, the operator of the vehicles can see that the opening is clear before they exit the bay. With the roll-up, a lot of times they get anxious and leave before the door is completely cleared of the stuff on the top of the truck.
Okay.
So they have to wait and be patient until the door is fully opened, and that might take longer. The side fold doors open faster, and they clear the opening faster. The downside of the folding ones are they're more expensive and they require more maintenance. And a lot of times that maintenance is harder to get, just because overhead door companies are readily available. There's not much that goes wrong as far as parts, and parts are easily available. With the side folding, they're rapid acting. Maintenance, if something goes wrong with those, maintenance is more of a problem. So
Well,
they work great, but when they don't work, they're a pain in the ass.
So on the tower truck, Mike, there's a 6-foot extension on the front of that, 7-foot extension on the front of that, which is the bucket. So the tower operator doesn't have view of that door, whether it's up or whether it reaches all the way to the top and then decides to come back down again, whether it be through electrical, accidental. You wouldn't even be able to see it until you drove through it.
I see. And do we
Ryan,
know,
could I ask
are
another
there,
question? Oops, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Matt.
So that you missed the most important point in this, that the doors, they look awesome. That's the only reason I want those doors. No, just kidding. Is it possible to design those doors? Actually, probably wouldn't make sense because the chief wouldn't want that. I guess I was kind of thinking out loud that on the ladder bay, you had the side open doors and then roll-ups for the other doors. But you probably wouldn't want people thinking it's one door or the other. So you'd want them all consistent, I'd imagine, now that I thought that out.
Brian, looking at what we have, as far as the way this sets up, I noticed that you put the other lockers in that Casey was asking about. What did we lose to put those in, if anything, other than just space?
You didn't lose any space on the gear lockers. We were able to use the space we had on the gear lockers and increase the numbers. And upstairs, we lost a minor amount of space in your mechanical room. That's all. Nothing else changed size.
I'm gonna ask something that's probably gonna be totally out of contents is in regards to this. If we looked at a fire pole on the outside from the mezzanine coming down into the bay area, would that still be under the same qualifications needed if it was on the interior of the building? Would it still need the same safety features, or could it be a gate or a gated setup that would be self-closing, self-securing? If
Did
it
you
was
see
done?
did you see that I added a fire pole to the plan?
I did, sir, I did not. I did not.
Yeah, I did also add a fire pole from the mezzanine down.
Perfect.
So
Perfect,
that's also in the cost estimate.
perfect, Brian.
So is, and that one, just so the chief knows, that, I'm looking at it now. That is, yeah, that's in a, sort of like in a separate room. Is that what your concern was, chief?
They have to be secured for, obviously, so somebody just doesn't walk in and drop. And then it's basically like a cage around it. And then there's a
Correct.
piece that has to drop to open the chutes below. I didn't know if it was under the same rulings, if it was secured off the mezzanine with the same safety features.
You have the same safety features, and it'll be from the mezzanine down to the apparatus floor. And that's what we're showing it.
Brian, perfect. We got to look at a training tower similar to what you are designing. And I can't tell you how impressed it was to see that design. It looks beautiful. You know,
Yeah, it's going to
getting
afford
to-
you a lot of training. Now, there's a cost to that, but it's going to afford you, it's within the numbers that you're seeing. But you have one whole face for ladder access. You have another face for openings. You have another opportunity to rappel. You have another opportunity to fill it with smoke. So you have a lot of training capability there. Confined space training, it all happens within that tower.
We got to look at that. Is there the open floor plan on the bottom, and without looking at it, is there any way to put so we have drains in there already for water, if we use water in there? Is it built so it's like water resistant, the interior, if they were to spray it, or is it just to get it in there and then? So basically moving hose up a set of stairs when it's fully charged is beyond difficult. But is
It's
it more than
designed for
just
that.
draining it? What's
No,
that?
it's designed for water use on the inside. All the interior is glazed block, and it's masonry, and it's galvanized metal. So it's designed for water use inside.
The other piece would be the grated floors. If the grated floors, is there a spot that pulls open for confined space or lowering somebody down off a tripod setup?
There is, from the first landing down. And there's also hooks on the top, so you could use it for hose drying if you needed that. So the height is, I think the height was about 30 feet on that tower. So if you had a 50-foot length, you'd fold it in half.
I love the looks of the outside. Love the looks. Is there anywhere in the building that you would suggest, instead of having doors, a barn door roll for security, or like a door that slides across instead of opening?
Oh, we could look at that. We could look at that in some of the firefighters areas.
It's just sometimes those, a swinging door is a lot harder to move if you're moving things in or out, or you're
Yep.
doing things where a barn door slides across secure, but it can go back into the wall when it's not, that area doesn't need to be shut off, especially around the classroom area or that public,
Right.
or what would be used for public. If we could cordon that area off from the rest of the station for security,
All those things would not affect the cost estimate.
I like the way you talk.
Hey, Brian, just a quick question. I kind of don't remember. Was that train tower always in the front of the building?
Yes,
It was. For some reason I thought it was in the back. But it looks good.
Is there, the louvers on the top of that, are those used for anything else? And could that be done as a windows on the top instead of louvers?
we have motorized dampers on those louvers. So if you did fill it with smoke, you could evacuate the smoke from the interior.
Perfect.
They're motorized, so normal operation, those dampers would be closed. So you can maintain heat in that space.
Mhm.
But if you did have to evacuate that the air in there, you could evacuate the air.
In looking from the outside, from the face rendering, there's a standpipe on the inside. Is there any Storts connections on the outside, 4-inch connections or 2.5?
There is,
Eyes on-
there is. Yes, there is.
We went in regards to tank truck fills. We went to Carver's station. In Carver, it actually has 1.5-inch drops. So we could fill a truck within, rather than tying onto a hydrant, they're already pre-connected. They're pre-set up by
Yep.
each one of the fire apparatus. This would have the same thing, correct?
This would have the same thing.
Brian, did you, I can't remember, did you do Carver Fire Station?
No, we did the police.
Oh, okay.
He went to the dock side, Mike.
That's right.
Well, I was just wondering, because the Carver station came in, honestly, I don't remember what the numbers were, but I can remember thinking it was really pretty inexpensive. But then I found out, I didn't know this, but Carver is a call department. So I assumed that some of that cost was because they didn't have to build in, overnight facilities and all of that.
Actually, it is, Mike. It's built. We went, that's where they're gonna be doing training next week for the MDU trailer, and we're gonna use some of their training facilities. That was where we kind of got a look at what the training tower would look like. But they did build bedrooms on the second floor, not knowing that if it ever would go full-time, or if they would have to do for storm coverage or things like that, special incidents. Brian, in regards to the foyer, we had spoken before about the Osamaquin being like a focal point as
Yes.
someone walked in. Would that still be possible with the way that sets up?
Yeah, the doors that we have in the front are side acting, sliding opening doors. So that whole front opening, those doors can get opened up. So you can roll that right through the front door into the lobby and then reset the doors for automatic sliding.
Okay.
Similar to the library doors, I think, that we currently have.
Right. In a case like this, are we better putting something like that behind glass so nobody's touching it or getting near it? And what would we have to add to do something like that?
I thought at least you'd have ropes or something, signage. If you had to do something more permanent, you could. You have room in the lobby to cordon it off. I've seen them done, Chief, and I think most people respect the signs and the ropes. And if you actually had to keep hands off, then we'd have to go more of a physical barrier. But we were assuming it's going to be within the lobby for viewing.
Brian, I apologize. I'm on an iPad, but is there a security camera system that's part of this proposal?
Yes, and we have for security and technology, we have $300,000 within the budget for cameras, access control, and security.
Okay, great. Thank you.
With just what you're talking about with that, is that more than enough to do that? And could we incorporate it into Station 2? So one station could watch the other station in regards to security of it. Station 2 is emptied when the vehicles go out. This way,
We'd
that
have
could
to,
be,
we'd have to see what Station 2 currently has and then get a line between or a way to communicate between. But yeah, we've done remote station monitoring.
the way it sets up now, we can do it from here, Station 1, with the cameras that are in place.
Oh, then
I'm
you
looking
should-
at even if the wiring is done, if we could adjust and put the new cameras, similar system to what we're dealing with, that 300,000 should be more than enough to cover at least this station and maybe a slight overage to do Station 2, I would assume.
I would assume.
Yeah, you.
Michael, could I just,
Yep.
oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, I'm just kind of recalling previous conversations with the chief and Chief Levy, particularly that the overall price is, estimated at under 20 million. I think that we really need to think about major capital improvements in Station 2 and incorporate it in this project. Because if you're at $1 million, Chief, this is like a no-brainer to add on this. And we're able to tell the town that we're in a really good spot for a good amount of time. I certainly don't think you'd be successful 2 or 3 years from now coming back and asking for $1 million, $1.5 million to make any upgrades. So I know there was a list at some point. I just can't remember if it was you or Chief Levy. But I certainly think it's a good strategy to incorporate it in a comprehensive fire upgrade and not just talking about the station. Is that something that you think that you could put together?
Without a doubt, similar to the outbuilding that they have here to replace the tent in the back.
Yep.
Whatever you want to call it, the fabric Quonset hut setup. The other piece would be a larger classroom training at Station 2 that could also have public use. Add several more bedrooms, because right now we're basically at max capacity for Station 2. We would have the space coming out the back of the station, and especially if we changed around a little bit of the where the tent currently is. And I say tent, it's a 60 by 60 building. But if we were able to move that off to the CD corner of the building and then asphalt, it would also give a larger area for open training and for vehicle parking if we did put training rooms / kitchen area add on with several bedrooms and even 2 or 3 more offices.
All right, I just meant Pate.
Hey, just so we're clear, I know where you live, and I got an in with the lady you live with, so be careful.
I mean, Michael, do you think based on the pricing that we're hearing, the numbers, I mean, I've always sort of envisioned this as a comprehensive upgrade that just happens to include a new fire station. Would you agree that that's probably a better sell? Do you think it's a bad idea? Should it be handled separately?
No, I honestly, I think every time we go out and ask, the voters for money, I think they're pretty good. They want to know that we've thought about this, comprehensively and well into the future. So I agree. I think let's look at what we need at Station 2, and wrap that into what we asked the voters for, and just tell them that this is the comprehensive solution that's going to last, like you said, for X number of years. So I agree.
So in regards to this type of setup, switching gears again, is there a way to put digital signage out on the road? This obviously, as it's been brought to my attention.
That is a must.
There is a number in the estimate for a road sign.
I think I talked early on about that as a way for the town to post information, since it's the major feeder for the town. I
agree with that, but I would also,
signature.
If we do it and it is that signature building, if we could do that same at Station 2, in the way it sets up in different locations, I don't care if it's in the front of the station, off to the side of the entrance, that would be fantastic as far as for giving out voting information, for giving out event information, traffic issues, weather issues, school closings, and it could be changed from interior, not dragging a portable sign, digital sign out to different locations.
I know if you look on page 5, there's $7,500 for a road sign at the street, which I put in the cost estimate. So
is that something that can be changed from a computer within the station, or is that something you go to the sign?
No, it's something you have software to change.
So Michael, could you just briefly talk about the next step? I mean, the only thing that I'm worried about in terms of the proposal is the $350 million high school that's coming down the pike, and getting this approved ahead of that. So I don't want Station 2 to delay us any further, but in terms of next steps, what are you thinking in terms of financing?
So here's where I come down. So I think on Station 2, I think we've got the ability to price out, improvements there in-house and incorporate those into a greater debt exclusion question. So I think my plan was to have this presented to the council before the end of the calendar year, let the council decide whether, you know, and largely, Matt, this is going to be you. Do we go out and put it on? Do we put it on the April ballot, or do we, you know, do a special election to get the debt exclusion done? And then as soon as we know, then we can plow ahead. You know, get Brian working on, you know, the construction drawings, get an OPM on board, and so forth. So that was sort of my you know, overall plan. You know, as long as we, you know, on the station 2, as long as we can fairly specifically identify the improvements that are needed and the cost based upon our you know, in-house estimates. I think once the money's voted, then we can, you know, go out and, you know, have Brian or somebody else design. I don't think that's going to be nearly as complex. So you know, that's an easy design and then an easy bid process. So so that's kind of that was kind of in terms of financing, that was sort of where we were going. But if you feel differently, if you think there's, you know, if we want to get ahead of the BP, you know, the technical school, then we may want to do a special election. That's hadn't been what we were sort of banking on, the timing that we were banking on, but it does, you know, we internally are flexible on that part.
Yeah, would you say that that the BP new high school will that be on the April ballot? Is that why you're thinking special election ahead?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
and I think, as you pointed out, that was sort of, they've been talking about that for years and years, but you know, now it's sort of right on us unexpectedly in some ways. So so I'm wondering if a special election, you know, just for Bridgewater stuff would be appropriate. And in fairness, I've got some communication that I have to do with BP just to find out. I mean, I know their committee voted something. I don't know what they voted last week, so I got to find out what exactly they voted on how to plow forward.
So would you be comfortable if what I'm hearing now is, so I need to understand Brian's next steps, but give us another week or two as for the fire department to make any additional changes or recommendations to the proposed plan so that they can be cost out, as well as try to develop a priority list of changes to Station 2. I mean, in my head, I just assumed tack on $1 million for substation 2, and then you know, have the chief work up to that number. I think it's reasonable. And so anyways, should we think about meeting in a couple of weeks? Any finalized ideas to Brian? And then we can start presenting to the council and get them on board.
I think that sounds good to me, just in terms of process. Absolutely.
May I ask a question in regards, if we did something jointly like that with Station 1 and Station 2, or headquarters and 2, if there was contingency left over from Station 1, could we do more at Station 2 to bring it up to par? If $1 million wasn't satisfactory.
So if you recall, when we did the academy building, we tied in the academy building, we did a roof at the fire station, and we did money for something that we hadn't even planned yet for the memorial building. Mm-hmm. And we did that. I think at the time, I think it was Tim Fitzgibbons was council president, and I think his theory was, look, let's get it all, anything we can think of in downtown area, let's just wrap it all together, because, you know, you got one shot at the apple. So I think we would do the same thing here. We would say, you know, estimate what it's going to cost for Station 2, and then wrap both projects into one debt exclusion, and then have that money be a little bit fungible, and word it so that we're taking care of, you know, these two projects, but not specifically identify how much goes to each, so that you can shift some money between the two. So long answer to your short question, Mike, is yes. I think you can create a financing mechanism that's going to allow for some shifting of monies as needed.
Okay, it's about 12:40. I know Brian's got to go. Brian, what do you need from us as a town?
All I have left to do is my final report. So you have seen everything that's going to be in the final report. I just need to package it all up and give you one final bound copy of all the 4 pieces all bound together. So I'm just waiting to get your nod to say all these 4 pieces look acceptable, and then I put them into a final report.
Okay, so in terms of the substation, that's sort of a separate issue, but in terms of the fire chief and the fire department's acceptance of this plan, Chief, would it be okay if we maybe even met in another week? Would that give you enough time for any final recommendations? Because we're kind of up against the wall in terms of timing, but really just look at it in detail. Any additional changes, I would say, send them directly to Brian and keep us out of it so that the changes can happen and the cost estimate can be updated. Does that work for you?
Yes, it does.
All right, so we'll plan on scheduling another meeting. Does the middle of the day work for everyone if we can get Brian back?
Yes.
All right, I think that's a good plan. Give you another week. In the meantime, if you could be working in the background on the Station 2 stuff, because we will have to have a list, even though we could just throw $1 million out there as a number, and then we'll meet back with Brian. I think, okay, that final plan so that we can get the final product. And in the meantime, probably not this town council meeting, but the next one, provide, at that point, we'll be able to provide a really good overview for the council, which I can tell you that collectively, there's strong support for this plan.
A question for Brian.
Mhm.
Will you have any interior renderings of the building like you have for the exterior? So we could get an idea of what the inside of the building would look like?
I don't have any interior renderings, no.
Actually, they like it on the house.
So Casey, just on generally, when you do a project, you don't really get, since the interiors are sort of, they're flexible, and I'm thinking of the school committee meeting last night, Matt, but the interiors, you can decide, it's not going to make a cost difference, but you can decide, later on after the process gets going, you can sort of decide what your interior finishes are going to look like. And there's plenty of time for that.
Yeah. When you're sitting in meetings talking about how red tile matches some branch to some other person, yeah, I'll bow out of those. Those are torturous.
Uh-huh.
All right, sounds good then. Brian, anything else for us?
No, I'm available, Chief, if you want to just call and we can talk offline, and I can walk you through some of the things we've done in the plan that you might not have picked up on. So Thank you.
Sir.
That'd be excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your help. This is really exciting to see all this work after a couple of years starting to really come together. And I know that at least for myself, I'm highly confident that this will get passed and we'll be moving on.
Knock on wood, I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
All
Thanks,
right. Have a good
everybody.
day.
Thank you.